Hello, Authority Gap listeners, and welcome to the Authority Gap podcast, the AI-hosted companion series for consulting firm founders and B2B expert-led service firms that want to become easier for buyers to understand, trust, recommend, and choose. In this episode, we're looking at why buyers default to familiar firms. And here's the question. Why does the familiar option often beat the more capable specialist? Welcome to the debate.
Yeah, it's a great question today. Really glad to be diving into this one.
Right, so let's just lay out our sides for this discussion. I am going to be arguing that when sophisticated enterprise buyers are comparing expertise and experience, well, the best qualified specialist should logically and empirically win the deal.
Right. And I'll be taking the completely opposite view. I'm arguing that buyers, they don't evaluate capability in a vacuum. They carry a ton of personal risk. So familiarity actually lowers that perceived burden, making the safe option the default winner.
Okay, so to set the stage for this, let's just imagine you're a CIO and you're tasked with migrating a sprawling, decades-old legacy banking system to the cloud.
Sounds like a nightmare, honestly.
Right? A massive, highly sensitive project. So do you hire the boutique data architecture firm that, they literally wrote the definitive, mathematically flawless framework for your exact database structure? Or do you hire the massive global tech giant whose logo is, plastered on airport billboards everywhere?
I know where this is going.
Logically, you want the boutique firm. You want the undeniable, proven specialist who has solved this exact monster before.
Right. And yet, as anyone who has been in this B2B industry long enough knows, that CIO almost always signs the contract with the global giant.
Yep.
They go with the logo. It's frustrating, I know, but it happens every single day.
It does, and that is exactly the crux of our conversation today. We're looking at this deep tension between technical capability and buyer familiarity. Because, look, my stance is that when you are dealing with sophisticated enterprise buyers and the financial stakes are astronomical, a $500,000 digital transformation project isn't a pair of bad sneakers, right?
Obviously not.
If it fails, the operational consequences are catastrophic. So buyers, they just have to prioritize actual empirical capability over a recognizable brand name. It's just basic risk management.
I hear that, but, look at it from the buyer's shoes for a second. You're looking at the financial risk to the company, which is true, but you are completely glossing over the risk to the individual human being who actually signs that contract.
Wait, but they're acting on behalf of the company.
Sure, on paper. But I look at this and see the buyers simply do not evaluate capability in a clinical vacuum. They carry profound personal and, frankly, political risk. Because of that, familiarity acts as this incredibly powerful psychological shortcut.
A shortcut?
Yeah, it lowers the perceived burden of the decision. It makes the safe, recognizable option the default winner, even if they aren't technically the best.
But, calling it a shortcut kind of implies that enterprise buyers are just cutting corners on diligence. And I just don't think they are that lazy or naive. High-stakes B2B consulting decisions are fundamentally rational evaluations of competence.
Rational? Come on.
Yes, rational. When the stakes are this high, buyers demand highly contextualized proof. They want deep diagnostic frameworks. Once a specialist firm comes in and demonstrates they are the undisputed master of a narrow, expensive problem, say, stopping a 15% margin bleed during an ERP integration, their empirical superiority should naturally override some generic incumbent's familiarity. Expertise is an objective reality, right? And corporate buyers are uniquely equipped to weigh that reality.
See, you're assuming a level of clinical rationality that, to be honest, frankly, doesn't exist when someone's career is literally on the line.
So you think they're just panicking?
Not panicking, just protecting themselves. Yes, the buyer is sophisticated, but if a corporate VP hires the wrong enterprise transformation firm and the project tanks, it is their personal reputation, their bonus, and potentially their entire career up in smoke. Fear and uncertainty are the primary forces sitting in that boardroom, not just a desire for the most elegant technical framework.
Look, I get the fear aspect. I really do. But assuming a corporate VP just defaults to the recognizable name drastically underestimates their intelligence.
I'm not saying they're unintelligent.
But it's like assuming a jury will decide a complex corporate lawsuit based solely on how famous the lead lawyer is, rather than looking at the empirical evidence presented in court.
Okay, wow.
Enterprise buyers are the jury. They weigh the evidence, they look at the case studies, they analyze the methodologies, and they evaluate the outcomes. If a hyper-specialist says we solved this exact blind spot for 3 other mid-market electronics manufacturers last year, well, that empirical evidence carries immense weight. The jury cares about the facts of the case, not just the name on the briefcase.
That is a brilliant analogy, truly. But let me tell you exactly why it falls apart in the real world.
Oh, please do.
Your analogy assumes the jury gets to go home to their normal lives, regardless of the verdict they return. In the corporate world, if the jury returns the wrong verdict, the jury gets fired.
Okay, well, that's a fair distinction, I guess.
Right? These buyers are juggling massive budget constraints, intense internal politics, and this profound personal exposure. If you're a founder listening right now, you've probably been that room. You've pitched the perfect diagnostic framework, you watched the champion nod along, and you still lost the deal to a legacy firm.
Which is infuriating.
It's totally infuriating. But it happens because when the pressure is on, a generic legacy firm feels like a safe harbor. There's that old saying in our industry, nobody gets fired for hiring the giant legacy firm.
Yeah, I've heard that a million times.
Because it's true. Why? Because the choice requires zero interpretation. If the project fails, the VP can just say, hey, I hired the biggest, most reputable firm in the world. Nobody could have foreseen this. The blame is completely diffused.
Yeah, but you're equating market presence with trust, though, and I just don't buy that. What you're describing is what I would call the visibility trap.
The visibility trap?
Yeah, just because a firm is highly visible or has a recognizable name doesn't mean a sophisticated buyer actually trusts them to solve a highly complex, nuanced problem. Mere exposure, like having logo soup on a website homepage or, buying a sponsorship at a golf tournament, that's just a boast.
Sure, it's marketing.
Right, and buyers know a massive conglomerate is going to sell them the A-team in the pitch meeting and then send a team of 25-year-old MBAs to learn the industry on their dime. So how does mere exposure beat a hyper-specialist's exact contextual proof?
Because you are conflating familiarity with a guarantee of competence. And they aren't the same thing, and buyers know they aren't the same thing.
Wait, so you agree that familiarity isn't trust?
Oh, absolutely. Familiarity is not automatically trust, and it is certainly not proof of superior capability. But we have to look at the mechanism of how this actually works in the human brain. Think about the cognitive load on that buyer.
Okay, cognitive load.
Right. When they see a familiar brand, they don't have to burn mental calories trying to figure out what mental filing cabinet to put the firm in. Familiarity creates a feeling of perceived safety.
Safety from what exactly, if not from project failure?
Safety from internal friction. It leads to defensibility. The safety doesn't come from knowing the firm is mathematically the best at the job. The safety comes from knowing that when you say the firm's name out loud, everyone else in the building will just nod their heads.
Huh. So it's about not having to argue with your coworkers.
Exactly. When a buyer encounters a familiar category or a known name, they know exactly how to anticipate the internal reactions of their peers. It's the path of least resistance.
But wait, let's look at what happens in the actual sales conversation. Let's take our highly technical specialist with a flawless track record.
Okay, the boutique guys.
Yeah, the boutique guys. They sit down with the internal champion. The specialist perfectly articulates the buyer's problem, maybe even better than the buyer can articulate it themselves, which, as we know, builds instant credibility.
Oh, 100%.
They show the exact diagnostic framework. The champion in that room is completely convinced of their superior expertise. They know empirically this specialist is the better choice. If the buyer is wholly persuaded, logic dictates they are going to advocate for the specialist. How does the specialist possibly lose that deal?
Because B2B sales is an organizational consensus-building exercise. It is not a one-on-one psychological exercise between a brilliant consultant and a highly rational champion.
But they're the one making the case.
Sure, but the real decision doesn't happen in that room. It happens in the hidden meeting.
The hidden meeting, meaning like the conversations the champion has to have when the consultant isn't around to defend themselves.
Exactly. Your champion, who is thoroughly convinced of your genius, now has to take that decision to a bunch of stakeholders who were not on that Zoom call. They have to walk into an office with a skeptical chief financial officer or a cynical procurement officer whose entire job description is to aggressively look for reasons to reject risk.
But the champion isn't walking in empty-handed. They have the evidence, what we would call portable proof.
Portable proof?
Yeah, highly specific case evidence, external validation, documented outcomes. They slide a document across a CFO's desk that says they solved this exact blind spot for 3 other manufacturers, delivering a 15% optimization in 6 months.
Okay, I see where you're going.
That kind of specific proof bypasses the procurement officer's psychological defense mechanisms. It shifts the perception from a risky gamble to a proven investment. The expertise, if it's packaged properly, provides its own defensibility.
That works in a perfect world, but the champion is not a subject matter expert in your proprietary consulting methodology.
Well, no, what they have the document?
Think of it like a game of corporate telephone. When they try to explain your complex, abstract expertise to the CFO, that high-definition movie you presented gets compressed into a blurry, pixelated mess.
A blurry mess. Nice.
It does. The specialist requires the champion to burn immense political capital and calories, translating their difference. The champion has to say, look, I know you haven't heard of them, and I know their approach sounds a bit unconventional, but let me walk you through this incredibly complex diagnostic framework.
And you're saying the CFO just tunes out at that point?
The CFO is terrified of risk. The familiar firm, on the other hand, is inherently easier to explain. The champion just says, we are hiring the global giant to handle the ERP integration. The CFO says, approved. It is explainable, defensible, and approvable without any heavy lifting.
So they just take the easy way out.
The champion simply doesn't want to burn their own political capital defending your risky bet, no matter how much they liked your framework. If a firm's narrative is unclear, buyers simplify it using the easiest available category. A brilliant strategic advisory firm just gets lumped in as a generic service vendor.
Okay, so let's follow your premise to its logical conclusion here, because frankly, it's a bit depressing for boutique founders.
I didn't mean to depress anyone.
Well, if familiarity is the ultimate trump card for defensibility, does that mean that highly capable specialists are doomed unless they spend, I don't know, tens of millions of dollars to imitate the massive visibility of larger legacy firms?
Oh, no.
Because if the only way to be considered safe in the hidden meeting is to have your name on a stadium, then we aren't talking about a meritocracy of ideas anymore. We are just talking about who has the biggest marketing budget.
No, not at all. That is the exact opposite of what a specialist should do. Imitating large firms is a fatal error.
Okay, good. So what do they do?
Well, trying to imitate them is what the visibility trap really is, trying to generate noise without meaning. Specialists absolutely do not need to become universally famous household names. They need to become consistently recognizable around a specific problem. Repetition should build recognition around meaning, not simply increase raw exposure.
Unpack that for me. What does building recognition around meaning actually look like for, say, a 20-person consulting firm? How do they compete in the hidden meeting without the giant marketing budget?
They do it by translating their difference into recognizable safety. They claim what we can call an authority lean.
An authority lane.
Right. Instead of trying to be famous for everything, they need to be known for solving one specific expensive problem. Let's use an example. Say you are a boutique firm that specializes in the legal defensibility of technology risk.
Pretty niche.
Very niche. You don't need to be famous to the whole world. You don't need billboard ads. You just need to be highly familiar to the specific CIOs and general counsels experiencing that exact risk.
So it's about being famous within a micro context.
Precisely. You arm the buyer with that highly specific narrative. You publish deep dive frameworks on that one specific problem. You speak at the highly targeted industry events where those specific buyers congregate.
Right, so you're everywhere they look,
but only them.
Exactly. You create a body of proof that circles that one singular issue. So when the champion goes into the hidden meeting, they don't have to defend a broad, unknown boutique firm. They just say, we are hiring the recognized authority in technology risk defensibility.
Ah, I see. So familiarity in this context doesn't mean I've seen their logo on a golf shirt. It means your specific point of view, your category, and your body of proof are instantly recognizable to the exact people who matter. That is how a specialist becomes a safe harbor.
Exactly. You give them the language to defend you. When the CFO asks, why them, the champion doesn't have to explain a complex methodology. They just say, because they wrote the book on tech risk defensibility. Boom, defensible, safe.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, but let me just push back a little there, because I still think the expertise itself is doing the heavy lifting in that scenario.
How so?
Well, the authority lane you're describing is brilliant, but it's essentially just a delivery mechanism for the expertise. The cognitive psychology of how buyers process risk is fascinating. They gather fragments of a firm over time, an article here, a passing referral there, and they form this invisible shortlist.
Right, the invisible shortlist.
But if the specialist's expertise remains abstract, it is very easy to ignore. The buyer needs the firm to articulate their problem better than they can articulate it themselves, because when you do that, the buyer automatically assumes you have the solution. Ultimately, it is the rigor of the diagnostic framework, the empirical reality of the case evidence, that actually solves the problem and provides that portable proof.
I'm not disagreeing with that at all.
Oh, you're not?
No, the internal capability must be entirely real. We are not talking about faking authority or, papering over incompetence with slick marketing. It must be earned.
Good, because that would be a terrible strategy.
Right. But my point is that if a firm does not actively close the gap between its incredible internal capability and the external confidence of the buyer, that firm will continue to lose 6- and 7-figure deals to lesser competitors. And they will lose simply because those generic competitors were easier for the buyer to explain to their boss.
Wow, yeah.
The best ideas do not win by default in B2B. They win when they are the easiest to defend.
That is a harsh reality, but I think you're right. So what this really boils down to for a consulting founder is realizing that, yes, superior expertise, deep frameworks, and contextualized proof are the fundamental drivers of value, but they aren't enough on their own.
Nope, not on their own.
That your expertise remains illegible or difficult to justify to a committee, it just cannot win. You have to translate your expertise into a structure that the market can actually read and use to defend you.
Exactly. Because buyers are constantly navigating a complex organizational maze. Familiarity will continue to function as a powerful shortcut because they are managing profound personal risk.
Right.
But that doesn't mean you need to be a global giant. A generic incumbent can absolutely be unseated if the specialist properly arms the internal champion with a clear, recognizable authority lane. Expertise is what your firm possesses internally. Authority is what the buyer can easily recognize externally. And the gap between those two is where deals are won or lost.
Yeah, I love that. We started this discussion today by talking about a CIO migrating a legacy banking system. And I think the takeaway is, if you are the undeniable genius of data architecture, your job isn't just to build the perfect technical framework.
It's just step one.
Right. It's just step one. Your job is to make sure that CIO can look their CFO in the eye and explain exactly why hiring your boutique firm is the safest, smartest, most defensible decision they could possibly make. It's about bridging that gap between your competence and their confidence.
Couldn't have said it better myself. There's definitely a lot more to explore here on how to actually build that bridge, but I think we've hit on the core mechanism today.
Absolutely. If your firm is often the stronger specialist but not the familiar default, take the Custom Authority Gap Prescription Quiz. It takes about 2 minutes, shows you where your authority gaps may be, and gives you the option to participate in a discussion group led by Derek Little, author of The Authority Gap. The Authority Gap is available on Amazon. To get the Authority Gap Reader Preview Kit, including the field guide and preview chapters, visit the book page at trailblazermastery.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.